Hi everyone, welcome back to My Safe Place. Hope everyone had a healthy, happy holiday season, and all the best for 2017. Let's hope it turns out to be a really good year for everybody. It's been a while since I've done a video, and I thought this one was long overdue because I did have something that I wanted to talk about. Something actually happened before Christmas. And it's been ruminating and brewing and sitting in my brain for a while. I've been hoping to get out of the complex PTSD hole I've been kind of wallowing in for the last 3 odd years. And the burnout that I went through was pretty severe, and I've recognized now that that had a lot to do with lifelong suppression and denial of what had been going on in my family of origin, with my first husband, etc. And I've worked with a lot of different people over the last 3 years, especially to try and work through some of that trauma. And essentially, and come around, using different methodologies, including seeing a psychologist, the counselors. But what became really clear is that before that, I had been taking courses. Now, I used to be a clinical hypnotherapist. I practiced hypnosis for healing purposes and personal growth, etc. I also was an NLP practitioner. I studied NLP, EFT, Psych-K, heart resonance, energy, healing work. All of this with service to others in mind, and very little work on myself, very little awareness of what was really going on. And absolutely no self-care. At the same time I was doing all these things and running my practice, I was basically running myself into the ground. I was a mom, married to my second husband, who's the love of my life, and without whose support I don't think I'd be here today. He's an amazing man, but we were both having to raise my 2 children from my previous marriage, with a great deal of pressure from my narcissistic ex-husband, and with no support from family and very little support from friends, most of whom decided that he was the better option in terms of friendship, offering things like free dentistry. And in that process, I was able to let go of people that I thought of as friends, but nevertheless, it all happened all at the same time. It was a huge emotional, I was completely flat on my back, to say nothing of some of the physical issues that I've carried forward since diagnosis and treatment for the cancer I had in 1999. Which the treatment was radiation, fast neutron beam radiation, which destroyed my thyroid, and all of the adrenal issues that I have with working too hard and not doing enough self-care, etc., etc. You get the picture. So in the last little while, I started seeing a naturopath. I've often included naturopathy in the work that I've done with regular Western allopathic medicine. And this particular naturopath has a lot of techniques that he uses. One of which included, muscle testing that I had done with Psych-K. So he felt very, very comfortable. And at the same time, he was. I found out later he didn't do this in his naturopathic practice. He did this separately, but he was also a shaman and practiced shamanic healing. And I had always wanted to explore that. So I started to do that kind of work with him, took an initial workshop, which I loved. And it really felt like the missing spiritual piece in a lot of the work that I had been doing. And I was doing it with maybe going back into my practice in mind. And then I realized that really I still needed to do this for myself, that I still needed the self-care. So I decided to sign up for a year-long mentorship program, including a few more workshops, and really go through this healing work with him in a group setting, which terrified me. After my crash and burnout 3.5 years ago, I developed severe social anxiety and a real discomfort with being in groups, and understanding where I had been coming from as a codependent, people-pleasing, rescuer type person, how that had affected relationships across the board, and how I had failed in so many, with myself, with my kids, with my clients, with other relationships, friendships, etc., where I had gone wrong by not being conscious. So there was a lot of shame around that for myself, especially being in a group. So for me, group work was going to be the ultimate challenge. And between my naturopath and I, we came to the conclusion that I was probably ready, that I really wanted to come out of this hibernation, as I had called it, and start to work again. And so the first group mentorship class was in the second week of December. And some of these people I had met before at the initial workshop, and a lot of them were new, and we were about a group of 20. And we all had to stand up and talk about our intentions. And it seemed to be a very supportive group. And it was my turn, and I stood up, and I was an absolute wreck. You could probably see it in my body language. Very, very nervous, very, very worried. And I talked about how this journey was about discovering me and the authentic me and what was going on deep down inside, and really healing that part. And lo and behold, when it came time for questions and comments, the first question I got, I was so out of it, I didn't even understand the question, and I had to ask her. I said, I don't understand the question, and I had to ask her to repeat it. And I'm still not sure what the question was, and I have no idea what I said as an answer. So I think I had already gone into fight or flight response there, which was scary. And then following that, another woman spoke up, and she started with saying, Allison, I'm not feeling you. And right there, I lost it. I really, really shut down, and she started to criticize my language, the language that I had been using. She started to tell me how I was wrong. And understand, this was we were only standing up and talking about our intentions. We weren't saying anything about our belief systems. But I became completely panicked and defensive. I was completely and utterly blindsided by this. And it's really interesting because my naturopath, who was leading the group, knew that this was my worst fear. This was my worst nightmare coming true. And he did his best to be supportive in such a way that I knew I was being supported, at the same time as not completely trashing this other person. And I worked really hard. And remember that this came at the beginning of an hour and a half long class. I worked really hard for the rest of the class to stay as grounded and as present, as I possibly could. It was very, very difficult for me not to dissociate, because that's my usual method. The tears were streaming out of my eyes, which was really unusual. I've never done that in public before in a public forum like that if I had ever felt like crying like that. In the past, I absolutely would have excused myself to the bathroom, and not in a dramatic way, but just quietly removed myself and cried and potentially not even come back. But even that would have been really, really rare. So for me to continue to sit there and I wasn't crying or making any noise like that. It was just weeping. And I allowed myself to stay there, and I tried to stay present, which was very difficult, and tried to listen to what was being said by others, and what was being said by our instructor. And we went into the shamanic journeying portion of the work, and I happened to be working with 2 other people. And that turned out to be very, very successful. I was still able to do the journeying, which was a relief. And at the end of the workshop, after I'd had some time to sort of reground and balance myself out, I was the last one leaving. I had been in a lineup to use the washroom, and he came to check, my instructor came to check in with me, and he asked me if I was okay, and I said yes, and I said I was aware that what this other woman was doing was purely a projection of her own stuff. And he said, okay, I'm really glad you caught that. And we discussed it a little bit more, and I said, well, obviously I triggered her, and he said, yeah, that's her journey, that's her stuff. So that was another bit of a breakthrough moment for me, that he was acknowledging that I had reacted to her projection, and that I didn't need to rescue her. Big deal. So he wasn't imposing that on me either, which was fantastic. However, after I left and went home, it continued. This event, this blindside, continued to occupy my thoughts. Oftentimes when I was feeling very, very low. And I have no idea who this woman is. I don't know her. I don't know if she's a narcissist. There have been other little things that I noticed that I paid attention to, but I certainly didn't see it coming. It wasn't enough. I didn't know her well enough to see red flags. So my reaction, I was really disappointed in myself in terms of my reaction to a blindside. I would have hoped that I would have caught myself sooner, not been as defensive, and just gray rocked her, which would have been the right response to that. And I really beat myself up over the fact that I didn't manage it. I wasn't able to handle that blindside. And I've been ruminating, and I'd actually written an email to my naturopath, removing myself from the rest of the course for the rest of the year, because this initial class was just sort of a taster class, free of charge, and just to sort of find out what was going to go on. And I just kept repeating to myself, I'm not ready, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. And slowly over the holidays, it comes back every so often, especially when I get low, that I'm not ready for this, that maybe I need to do more one-on-one healing before I'm ready for this. And then as time has passed and I'm going closer to an actual naturopathic appointment with him, where I'm actually going to get to discuss it with him before the actual first class takes place, what I keep thinking to myself and how I keep feeling about it is slowly changing and evolving. And I'm beginning to understand that in all likelihood, even someone not suffering from C-PTSD would probably have reacted in a very similar way to that kind of a blindside and that kind of attack. And I really do need to wait and discuss it with him, because I have no desire to impose that on the rest of my classmates, to impose that kind of energetic relationship. If she's still in, I have no idea if she's still going to be in the class or continuing to take it. So I think it's important that I not necessarily decide right away, and that I give myself some leeway and some acceptance and some allowance for having had a really negative reaction to this kind of blindside, to this kind of attack, which may not have been intended as an attack on her part. It may have been my perception of it, having already been in fight or flight response. So I have no idea what other people's perception might have been. I know that my instructor was very aware of how I was perceiving it, and just his support alone was amazing. So as I think about this, I'm really trying once again to stay grounded, to stay level-headed, and to approach this with him in my next appointment in the discussion, and have as much of a balanced non-fight or flight response as I possibly can. Do some muscle testing around it and really become aware of how my response may have fed her need to attack me. And I'm not taking responsibility for her behavior, but I really do want to take responsibility for my reaction and be able to go forward with more of a response. And that if she is going to take the class, and if she is going to be triggered by things that I say, that I can't control her, but I can learn to manage me. And I think that it's important for me to feel that he supports me enough to do that, and to move forward slowly, and to maybe discuss options rather than signing up for the whole year. Explore 3 months or 6 months of the mentorship program to see how I progress in terms of treating my C-PTSD symptoms with care. So that was my experience. Don't know if anyone else has felt that they were coming along nicely and then got blindsided and knocked down again. I know that it can be a really, it can feel like you're Sisyphus pushing a boulder uphill only to have it roll back down and you start back from the beginning, which is definitely how this feels for me. But I think if we encourage each other to keep going, that it's going to be okay, and that there are people out there who understand and support us, we can make this stuff happen. So once again, all the best for 2017. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.